Now I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. Despite being a chronically online pendejo, there's one trend on YouTube that I have purposely refused to touch on for far too long, and that was indie animation. There was always two factors that prevented me from even giving these animations a watch: the cringe fandom and the controversies that some of these animators would get themselves into. More so on the fandom. I mean, have y'all seen what Hazbin Hotel has done to Verbal Ace? Complete wild can of worms that I don't even want to get myself into for the sake of my already brain-rotted mind that clearly does not want any more deranged content anymore. Anyways, after taking time to search indie animation that isn't filled with complete toxicity, I was finally able to stumble upon a series on YouTube that had me fully intrigued, found on the Glitch Productions channel, to be specific. Which was a nice change of pace, as in a complete contrast to the other indie animation where their first project is also their first footing into animation. The show that is the topic for this video was luckily made by an animation team that has already gained experience by prior shows they have already made before getting a proper glow up. And the show in question is, of course, directed by Liam Vickers and is paired with the Lord Witchigal brothers, Luke and Kevin, Luke being the most interesting out of the two as he's actually SMG4, who has been known as a YouTube legend at this point as he was around in the early ages of when the site didn't give a damn about its edgy reputation. So to see him fund an animation team, come on, that has to be the biggest commitment you can ask for. Like, clap it off for this dude, for real. Anyways, after time has gone by, the first episode of Murder Drones, the pilot, was released, and the show would skyrocket very rapidly. Today, the pilot sits at around 53 million views. It has over 1 million likes. Now I gotta admit, the stigma of having no interest in indie animation is why I didn't bother checking this web series when it came out. It actually took towards the third episode to finally be invested in this series, but I honestly think it might have came down to the thumbnail being complete purple galore, and y'all know that I love the color purple, if the color scheme on my persona isn't already obvious. Anyways, after sticking for the entirety of the show, as the web series officially ended on August 23rd of this year, I could say with confidence that this is the best web series I've ever seen so far, and it's not even close. So to express my appreciation, I'm gonna go into deep dive into every single episode from this web series and explain to y'all why Murder Drones is great. The show starts off with someone explaining the world building and their history, which, I'm not kidding you, sounds exactly what's going on in the real world right now. Humans creating robots to do exactly where they left off, only for the robot life to be in destruction once a trio of robots came to Earth, in purpose of creating havoc by taking their lives away. We don't know who created these murderous robots, but what we do know is that they mean business. Now we cut back to our main character, Uzi, the one giving all the exposition at the beginning, psychologically torments the whole class with a railgun, which would then go haywire and injure Uzi spectacularly. This would cause all of her classmates to make fun of her, except for her semi-crush Thad, who she decided to tell towards about her plan sneaking into the Murder Drones lair as the last straw to save the world and earn her dad's respect, and walks off the campus scot-free. Then, after having to talk to her dad for a while, who's obsessed with Thor, no, not the Roblox game, we're talking about actual objects that exist in the real world. Get your heads out of the gunner. He gives a wrench to Uzi in hopes for her to be into doors like him. What an absolute weirdo. Then, after sneaking into the lair, she comes face to face with the murder drone, which she would luckily take out without problem, until it suddenly came back to life and all of a sudden is not bloodthirsty like before, but is instead very polite? Huh. After sorting their differences between the two, our murder drone, N, gives us an insight to him and his other two murder drones, V and J, who are complete freaks in contrast to N. Then Uzi storms off, leaving N with his abusive freaks, who has always grown pretty suspicious of him. Always. N follows Uzi to her dad's base with his friends and causes a lot of havoc, resulting in her dad basically leaving her to die, only for the freaks to show up and compliment N for a while, for the first time, until N begins to question his position, which would then give Jay an excuse to cut him off. Ouch. Then Uzi wakes up acknowledging but wondering how N even switches sides, only for N to admit that he is secretly ashamed of being a murder drone. Damn. Uzi gives in to repair N with the wrench her neglectful father gave to her. We cut back to the freaks about raiding the base of Uzi's dad along with the friends of his and Uzi's. Wait, how did Uzi's friends even get here in the first place? Only for both Uzi and N to put a stop to them, which they succeeded at.
So sorry. Have fun repressing this.
What is that?
What the hell?
It is what it is.
Yeah, this scene completely caught me off guard when I saw this the first time. Then we finally cut back to Uzi planning to kill all humans as she laughs maniacally. And that was the pilot. A pretty rough start if I'm being completely honest. Like a lot of really weird pacing going from scenes that shouldn't go as long as with the important scenes that deserve more screen time. And the animation, especially with the fight scenes, are absolutely rough for the most part. Thank God this issue was fixed by the next episode and has luckily remained that way for the rest of the show. But that said, I don't hate the pilot and there's still plenty of positive things about it. The main spotlight is obviously the characters. Uzi being the main character is actually the biggest highlight for this entire roller coaster moving forward. I love how a show can take the concept of an angsty teen, but making sure that all of the angst makes sense while somehow making the character entertaining and fun. And that's what Uzi is to her finest. And I'll be honest, everything she does or what she goes through is the embodiment not only for a Hot Topic high schooler, but also the embodiment of what I have to go through in real life as well. Full of angst and just overall hate the world. And her appearance on her model is also purple. Seriously, I've never mentally connected with a fictional character in my whole life until Murder Drones. And the drones themselves are fun too. The idea of one drone being a contrast to the other two drones is an interesting idea, and so far the tension / conflict between the trio is really well done. But overall, the weird pacing, rough animation, and jokes that don't fully land looking back is why I believe the pilot could have had a way better output than how it is currently. We now open to a weird flashback of the drones being servants? As we get introduced to a new drone that may or may not be important later down the line. Then we cut back to the Murder Drones base with Uzi and V, who both clearly have a rivalry against each other. As Uzi shares clear hatred towards the humans for negotiating with her mom, V rebuttals saying that they were made to solve a problem, as she puts it. We now get a collection of scenes of worker drones investigating as they all get killed by some force one by one, without effort as the force uses holograms to trick the real robots, getting them killed in the process. We also get a collection of scenes of Uzi's journey with N and Thad, actually going into the damn haunted mansion of corpses, and it's at this point where we see what the force really looks like. Y puta la verga madre, chilopodophobia is actually kicking in. Somebody please pick me up, I'm scared right now. Anyway, Centipedify J uses the hologram manipulation to even go as far as to mimic Uzi's deceased mother. Eventually, after that hologram nonsense, both Uzi and N managed to take out the Centipedify J. But it was also the moment where Uzi begins to question what was real and what wasn't, especially with N. This caused both Uzi and N to drift apart from each other and go off in their separate ways. Okay, so this episode is a clear improvement from the pilot. The animation is a massive step up, the jokes actually do land this time, and the action sequences are actually pretty cool. But the weird pacing is still all over the place. I would honestly argue that this episode has it worse than the pilot, as we get a lot shoved in our faces, but most of the scenes don't flow naturally at all, as we spend a lot of time with plenty of filler moments that take up a huge portion of this episode's runtime. Take the scenes with the worker drones, and especially the dad stuff, for example, who, quick rant, I could give less of a damn about. Like, I get that he's supposed to be the neglectful father, but we really haven't gotten any background for why he is the way he is, aside from her wife's death. The only trace we get from it is that he's obsessed with Stop it! Stop mentioning the To give credit for what it's due, the best part of the episode is still the characters. V and N finally being explored more this time around. I mean, everyone knows the apology scene. It's genuinely one of the most adorable moments I've ever seen in my goddamn life. The Centipedify G is terrifying as all hell, and honestly kind of reminds me of Mangle from FNAF 2. Though most of its terror would honestly start wearing off when this beast speaks in text-to-speech, insulting to our main characters. Trust me, this beast will not be terrifying anymore once we compare to an alternation of Uzi that we will discuss more about when we get to episode 4. And hey, despite shoved in between the weird pacing, this Russian drone definitely seems like someone to look out for in the future. Like, you don't put a random scene of some unknown drone with a ripped out picture of one of the main antagonists and expect me not to be curious of how the final resolution will play out between the two. I knew it! Anyways, as I predicted from the last episode, our new antagonist Russian drone, Doll, is set on a mission to sabotage Prom Queen, an event that Uzi and the Murder Drones have been called, or should I say lured, into. We then cut to a montage of Uzi being the equivalent of me in every aspect. Trust me, I cannot emphasize how relatable Uzi is to me. Anyway, she stumbles upon missing posters of lost or deceased drones, which she then takes for her collection, only to notice that her collection of missing posters she would use to draw has been taken away by her father, who just noticed the collection at the last minute. As her father would then talk to Uzi about her prom dress he got for her, it stated she is grounded from seeing those pesky murder drones. He presented Uzi some classmates to go out to prom with, and oh god! Yeah, it wouldn't take long for Uzi to know for a fact that this event will be a train wreck just by seeing this thing alone. We cut back to Ed and V knowing about the prom queen, and this is where V plans both her and Ed to wear the dresses to
show up fabulous. The sad purple one lets us in because she has no friends. We kill everyone and pop her little head off.
And of course rebuttals her wishes and explains her the circumstances he got himself into from the last episode to convince that her way of thinking is fundamentally flawed, and begs for her to realize her corrupted mindset by working with Ed to fix their conflict. But V will not take no for an answer, so in response she goes in separate ways from Ed. We now dive into Uzi, who is trapped in a disgusting situation with Lizzie and Doll, who, just like I foreshadowed earlier, are working together to cause havoc to Prom Queen. Something that Uzi found out far too late and has made a mission to escape Doll's house. Something that Doll realized far too late as well. And this is where we get possibly the ultimate gem of a line for this entire web series.
Как они по-русски любят говорить. Ой, я должна была предположить, что кто-то сможет убежать через вентиляцию, используя выброшенное зеркало как ступеньки.
So great. Now every party is involved with the prom queen because of the Soviet dictator-in-law. I really hope there isn't any actual Russian forces watching this video and taking my joke seriously enough to bring the DMC strike against me. Anyways, N, with his dapper clothing, go out to find Uzi walking in the snow, and they both know exactly what they're in for, 100%. And luckily has found a resolution pairing up to stop whatever havoc Doll will be committing in Prom Queen. Now we cut back to the actual Prom Queen, and as everyone is having a complete opposite of a good time, even having some of the adults, including the dad, or Khan as that's his real name, Lizzie begins to introduce herself and...
This!
Oh, we're gonna die!
Oh no! Except V has no idea that Doll is right there in front of her getting ready to cause a crash out. But Lizzie sure knows, though instead of secretly rooting for Doll, she's actually terrified for V's laws, as despite as idiotic as this sounds, she actually kinda likes V. But just as Doll was at her last stage of preparation, guess who's back, baby?
Unhand them, you fiend!
Okay.
I'm confused. On second thought, you're way harder than Doll. Run, idiot!
V's karma is just approaching around the corner, and we would learn that the reason why Doll is even taking V and only V out of her misery is to give her payback for murdering Doll's generation. The trauma that she will never, ever recover from unless she sets out to kill the one responsible for her loss. She will do anything to get her justice back. But Uzi and Air pair up to save V, and despite the plot armor and the ridiculous obstacles Doll might have posed to our antagonist, Doll would get her fate come to an end.
Easy!
V, we needed her for answers. What? She's fine. A little tuckered out.
After taking some time to reflect on what our main protagonists got themselves into, they decided to go into Doll's house where she had kept all the bodies she has taken out. Many drone lives she has gotten rid of. And you start to wonder how long she had been doing all her massacring. Weeks? Months? Years? Or centuries? Okay, maybe not that long, but you get my point. Though it wouldn't be long for Doll to just come back to life and cause a little bit more trouble before storming off scot-free. And we end off with a cliffhanger of presumably a human antagonist, Tessa, along with Jay, who seems to be working for her. Glitch Productions, you absolute sneaky little bastard. This is a banger episode. Obviously, a lot of stuff is happening, but in contrast to the previous two episodes, the scenes flow naturally this time. time. The background characters like Lizzie finally get more screen time, and Doll has been legitimately terrifying so far. Also, how can anyone come up with a fight scene that takes place during prom where disco is played out when trying to parkour table and kicking knives? How cool is that? And it's really cool how this show will take a character that seems unimportant only to pull off a 180 to make them the biggest threat imaginable. More so than the main antagonist, like Jesus. You think I'm scared of J and V? No, I'm terrified of Doll, man. Also, this episode is where the infamous Newsy ship starts to play off, and it's genuinely wholesome. The line of Uzi admitting she's not doing anything well, but is willing to not go through the toughest situations alone, hits so hard. It comes to show that she wants to get out of the angsty shell and actually be known as a hero for once now that she has N on her side, being her moral support. Also, something that I've been neglecting to mention is that the absolute solver symbol that both Uzi and Doll have the most control over seems to be the primary reason as to why Doll was able to come back from dying. Obviously, there's more to the problem solver that I want to save all for the discussion for when it becomes more relevant, but it's gonna solve a lot about the murder drones later down the series. We now open to a bit of an unexpected setting. Not like the usual series setting that you would expect from this web series. I mean, we've had openings where we had lairs, abandoned houses, or even schools, because let's be real, school is a nightmare. But a camping road trip? Okay then. Anyways, we see Uzi participating in the camp, and after leaving the bus, she takes out her choker that her dad gave to her and thinks back to what her dad said about when her mom was alive, and reveals that he is neither who Uzi and her mom needed, which, damn. If she didn't have daddy issues before, that she definitely has them now. Anyways, we cut back to current Uzi wearing the choker, and we get confirmed that Uzi was the one to get these students out on the camping trip, according to the teacher. Then, as soon as one of the students asks who is going to lead the students to go out exploring, boom, baby, the murder drones are here to be the leaders for the camp, and...
Everyone, -1.
This is also where Uzi storms off to very obviously continue finding the mysteries of what's up with Doll, while V and N take care of the students. As she finds whatever unsolved mystery she hopes to unravel, she takes a peek out the window to see all of the campers having a blast with the murder drones. This moment is important because it creates a sense of dread that Uzi might be left out and no one was going to be able to save her from whatever turmoil she could go through, which will be proven correctly later down this episode. Anyways, as Uzi begins to overheat, V would come in, and I knew Uzi was the one that sent these students on a camping trip as an excuse for Uzi to search more mysteries about Doll. Though unfortunately, V begins to threaten Uzi to stay distant from the crowd as she'll be dead otherwise. Then V storms off and Uzi continues her quest from where she left off. However, in repairing a robotic cockroach, it starts to communicate with Uzi, stating that it needs to be put on a proximity reader or a cabin fever lab, with small tidbits of Doll appearing in distance from Uzi's sight. Here we can assume Doll is messing with Uzi by being the robotic cockroach to get Uzi to an unsustainable state. As she returns to the drones, she still kept distance away from the students as to not trigger V, but N simply couldn't resist himself to call Uzi, resulting in one of the students accidentally shooting an arrow at her, which she resisted with their absolute solver manipulation, only for her to overheat, canceling both her manipulation and the arrow. As she begins to panic over the fact that she is craving for the oil to consume, she storms off once again to the cabin where all the oil is found. And as you might have guessed, she goes crazy. Absolutely no obsession other than oil. Then we cut to the murder drones arguing, and this is where we hit a really fascinating turning point for N, as for once now being in an argument with V, he begins to stand up for himself and calls out everything wrong with V, as he still wonders why such hatred towards Uzi, the only being on this entire planet that N has formed a proper and albeit kind of romantic bond with. He knows for a fact that V is hiding a lot of information that he still wishes to have known sooner than V lets on, so he decides to leave and search for Uzi and have V to look out for the campers. Yeah, she really was not feeling this ordeal anymore, as she tells the campers to literally do whatever they want and storms off as well. Seriously, if this montage right here does not showcase a lesson to have your students not prepared nor protected, worst case scenario, your students are from elementary, then I don't know what will at this point. We now cut to N finding himself in a lab, and this is where we cut to a very important set piece that will carry the rest of the series moving forward. And N is very not not ready to see the upcoming Holocaust that's about to reach at the end of the tunnel. We then cut to the students telling spooky stories, only to be interrupted by...
Rebecca!
Who did this to you? Don't remember name. Super unpopular.
Descriptive clues, man!
Purple eyes. Hot topic.
I swear to God, this show is so self-aware. Anyways, we finally are introduced to a completely new, albeit disgusting form of Uzi who looks suspiciously like a murder drone. Now, keep in mind, this form was caused by Doll baiting Uzi and getting her overheating like no tomorrow as a way to get her to eat a lot of oil to turn into a monster. Given her manipulation tactics with Uzi, we could clearly see the level of danger Doll will pose on anyone who tries to get in her way, especially when dealing with personal loss. So Uzi finally found some prey, and the students immediately take notice of her and all split up to escape. As Uzi begins to hunt them down and taking them into pieces, it wouldn't be until midway through killing Lizzie, V has stopped by to kill Uzi once and for all, not saving Lizzie. At least that's what she puts it, which... God damn, she almost lost her life for this road, and yet this is how you communicate with her? Anyways, despite V's best efforts, Uzi would almost brutally take her to surrender until...
Whoops! Easy there, buddy. Whoops! Ow! Up we go! What did I say about antagonizing her?
Emotional damage.
So Ed is going full therapy mode on Uzi, and the 5 stages of romance between the two is 100% complete. Now, I usually don't even tend to get myself invested in romance for most media, as a lot of the time they tend to be shoved in the story's plot without any payoff, but this is one of the few ships that actually works so well. And being the odd one out of the murder drones, as in complete contrast to V and J, he's the only drone who has never believed that the position he has been put was doing any good. So to see him grow out of being a doormat to a warrior to protect Uzi showcase how badly he wants to change the world for the better. And nothing proves this mindset more than this flying sequence. He admits to Uzi that when he was alone with his abusive freaks and his other close ones in the past, life was genuinely terrifying for him, and it made him forget how better his world could have been if he experienced any joy. A sentiment that Uzi obviously couldn't agree more. But when they're together, all of a sudden both of their problems and, let's be honest, trauma goes away, as End lets her know that as long as they take baby steps together, everything is going to be okay. It may not be an automatic victory, but as long as they try, they can repair everything what's wrong with their current world, fixing the lives of not only the drones, Uzis especially, but also the humans. Yeah, we could clearly see the obvious jealousy from V and tells Lizzie to piss off while leaving off a smirk. So all the drones and the students get on the bus to get themselves home. And can I ask how this bus even operates for a second? The bus literally is treated as a horse, as the teacher, who I guess is the bus driver, drives on top of the bus out in the cold. Okay then. Anyways, all of a sudden N wakes up and he would notice... Yeah, I told you what is on screen right now will carry throughout these episodes, and it's not stopping either. The show will keep reminding you when you least expect it. What a wild ride. Not that I'm against it. If anything, the insanity presented in this episode, I believe, was the right step to get the show progressing. And I think it was really smart for this episode to engage the setting for what the first half that seemed kind of laid back, only to go in a dark direction in really clever ways. I honestly think Liam just wanted to subvert our expectations for what the show was capable of. Also, now that we went over Disassembly Uzi, I want to make a quick argument as to why this rodent is actually peak horror. The reason why I find Disassembly Uzi to be scarier than Centipedified J is that with a slight sinister giggles and predatory movement when killing her prey comes a lot more natural than in complete contrast to Centipedified J, who speaks in texted speech, insulting to our main characters. Seriously, do you think I find this beast to be scary at all with this voice? Trust me, after having to rewatch all of these episodes, this creature is so lame. I would have much preferred for Centipedified J to be completely voiceless so that its killing spree during episode 2 comes a lot natural. Disassembly Uzi is not that, and that's perfect for a rodent like her. If you were to put me in both of these situations and ask me which of these two encounters would traumatize me more than the other, I would pick Disassembly Uzi any day of the week. Not to mention she looks pretty damn scary. And lastly, I gotta talk about N's arc, because he has by far the most noticeably outstanding arc out of everyone from what this show has given us so far. In the first 2 episodes, N was was established as a bit of a doormat, not in an annoying way as he luckily still acknowledged that his position was not good at all, but he couldn't do much, especially when Jay was in control. But by the time he got to meet Uzi for the first time, although it took a while to get a neutral understanding for each other, Uzi realizing En's mindset being the path for her good ending that's waiting for her at the end of the tunnel was a game changer since, as we established before, she has grown up with deep angst and has let time by just waiting to die. But that mindset has, thank God, been thrown out the window, thanks to En's kind-hearted nature. And it's perfect for En as well because, as we've seen with his duty as a murder drone, we've seen how horribly mistreated he has been with V and J. So to have someone, even if that person is an angsty teenage girl, look at his position with concern has not only gotten Uzi an idea for what could potentially save her image by looking out for someone who could get rid of all of the angst she has built in the past, but also make En realize his potential to change the perspective of his abusive freaks who clearly don't know any better for what they even want to achieve in the first place. So by the time Jay was out of the picture, he has developed time to find a way to convince V that she has been in the wrong for so long. And in this moment where En tells V to fuck off is quite literally all I need in my life, and honestly really brings a tear to my eye. So yeah, Newsy rules, and I will hear absolutely nothing from this. So remember the flashback of the murder drones being servants in episode 2? Well, this episode is pretty much that, but as a whole episode. Before the flashback begins though, we actually get introduced to the zombie drones tape, which would actually explain the X symbol for the murder drones' eyes when killing their opponents, and would also serve as an explanation for how the trio were properly disposed of, or disassembled. After the tape is over, we enter a flashback of En being as wholesome like we have established before, being alone, reading about golden retrievers and finds... And as soon as En finishes his golden retriever book, En notices a trapdoor banging and banging. So what does he do? He pieces out and storms off scot-free, like any protagonist should do from now on. And just as we least expected, there she is, in the same auto-tune voice like with Centipedefied J. And this is where I'll make the statement right now that yes, this girl, Sin, is the absolute solver. The first thing you can notice with Sin here is her auto-tune voice, and most importantly, her zombie-like movements with how she behaves. Remember the zombie drone tape that kickstarted this episode? Well, despite our disassembly trio being successfully disposed, making them like any other robot and emoting like a human, Sin never has. Because she had not been disassembled is what portrays her zombie-like movements with her having to move her head upright. After En brings Sin towards our new character Tessa, we get a good look of the humans for the first time, and we see how poorly educated they really are, especially Tessa's parents, who are just as abusive towards everything as they are with her.
We will not entertain your dumpster pits.
Yes, Mother. Sorry, Mother.
Hello, Bozo.
Christ almighty! I said this one out of my sight. Oh, still can't follow simple orders.
No, please,
Swamp! Dumping your broken drones clogging our library tomorrow too. Don't test me.
They are not broken. We can no longer be thrown out.
Did that little antichrist...
I told her to say that and brought her here. I just hate orders. And your fans dumb?
So En gets his punishment of having him chained with crows, tickling and torturing him until...
Made the tag when I was 8. Shut up.
If you say so! Before we could answer that though, we move to a scene of Tessa locked with chains, presumably by her own mother, and Sin makes a deal with Tessa to not discard her pets so Sin would have to discard her. With her centipede imagery, we could see the level of dominance she opposes to anyone who deny her requests. Ending this conversation, leaving with Jay and Tessa speechless, which is absolutely justified. Now we cut back to En interacting with Uzi, who is actually doing a little bit of hacking in En's memories as she says to Servant N that the current version of himself for the previous 4 episodes had passed out because some internal program is putting a deletion to his memories. So in order to save N's memory from being digitally lobotomized, they both gotta figure out what is happening to him by going into the library basement where the locked trap door is that was begging earlier. As we get a cutaway joke of Uzi being interrupted twice. The second gag happens a little later, but we'll get to that in a bit. After that bit is over, Uzi resumes as the Crow with Servant N, and yep, he made it to the basement without her, alright. Though we would later find 2 drones just stationary. One is literally hanging its wings out, crucified if you will. Despite the obvious intimidation this imagery created on N, he still pulled his hesitation to just be committed to find what's in the trapdoor. He just needs to move statue V, removing the rug, and oh god damn it!
Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, no, no.
We cut to a montage of our new team working together and are all aware of disassembled V that both N and Uzi had woken up. So they try distracting her while Uzi swiftly takes the key from Jay and both immediately go to the basement to open the trap door and be greeted with
Jump scare. Grab.
Dark X Wolf 17! No!
Get over here! Got him! Enemy spotted.
And Jay's useless.
As Uzi gently takes N down to the trapdoor, we discovered bodies. And this is where we get confirmed that N isn't the only drone who's getting his memories removed. Sin has had a history of taking over their memories of other drones and killing them in the process. But as soon as we get comfortable figuring out a solution, boom baby, here's a second gag of Uzi getting interrupted. This time it's Doll and... I'll go over my thoughts in Doll after finishing my summary, but know that I despise the way Doll is utilized in this episode. While that's going down, we cut back to the humans coming face to face with Sin, with everyone looking confused in silence until Tessa and Jay kick the doors open and warns everyone that Sin is a monster and that needs to be put down. This causes Sin to snap. It is about to cause a big holocaust. Unfortunately, we don't get to see the epic chaos as we immediately cut to Doll and Uzi fighting each other until Uzi successfully locks her out and comments to her dad that he raised a good daughter. We then cut to Sin trying to get V to pick up the utensil with her claw, but can't because V can't actually see, until N gives her the shattered glasses which she could actually see and finally get the grip of the utensil. And after a little bonding of the golden retrievers, Sin had enough and pushed her out of the way and was close to removing N's memories until Uzi finally got her hacking programming in control and took over the mechanical body. And both N and V gained their future consciousness and recognized Uzi through her new body. Though V would rebuttal to get her out of the head and causing both present N and V to wake up in the real world. Leaving off this episode with the most filthiest cliffhanger of all time.
Вот ваш ключ. Берите меня с вами. Это условие.
What?
Just checking. Let's go.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
I'm gonna put this as lightly as I can here. This episode was a massive letdown from the last 2, and it's overall really weird to me. I think my biggest problem is that this episode is about teasing information, which I wouldn't mind if this episode at least gave us the next piece of the puzzle, but no, instead we get more implications than anything else. I think the very definitive backup evidence for what I'm saying is that this episode gives us plenty of hints that lets you know exactly what's gonna happen next from the first point to the next. I knew from the robot centipede imagery with Sin signifying that she's the absolute solver and is this show's true big bad. I also knew from her demented dialogue from the beginning when interacting with N that she's gonna cause a massive snap later down in this episode. And lastly, I knew that all the texts written that N was actively ignoring were Uzi trying to demand him to go to the basement so he doesn't waste his time. The only character that would have Dark X Wolf 17 as her username is Uzi, being the already emo angsty teen that she is. The audience shouldn't be that stupid to figure that out already. There were barely any surprises surprises to be found here, and I guess the only part of this episode I didn't see coming is Doll. But it's not like the surprise was even that good, as she enters abruptly midway through this episode, interrupting Uzi while hacking the minds of N and V. Especially for a character like Doll, this gag is not even funny, and what's worse is that you could literally take this gag out of this episode and nothing would change at all. This was obviously put because the show thought it would be really funny to make a legitimate threat to be comedic as hell. And again, this just ruins the character they've been hyping throughout all of these episodes. Never again, please. And lastly, the payoff for the basement reveal is honestly kind of underwhelming. We were hyped what was under the basement from the trap door, but once we got to see everything, what did we actually learn? That Sin had been experimenting with dead bodies to corrupt their memories and digitally removing them? Where would our main characters go after this if Doll and Tessa had to jump back into the main story? They'd go nowhere and instead run into a dead end. I do feel bad that I can't bring myself to like this episode because the premise is genuinely really cool. It has plenty of potential to work, but as it stands, it has more lows than it has highs, so it doesn't rank highly in my book. Now, that's not to say that the good parts of this episode aren't worth mentioning, because there's plenty of things that I do love a lot. Tessa is a really compelling character, with her being a troubled kid, having to deal with her abusive parents, having the drones to be her only friends, and willing to sacrifice her life to save Ed, as she genuinely cares for the drones. Though I kinda do wish that she was this episode's main character, as there's still plenty of unanswered questions, like why would she send the drones to kill the rest of the colony? Are Doll and Tessa paired up to take down Uzi, or has Tessa grown some suspicion on Doll? Once again, with the positives, like with the previous episodes, the animation is getting better and better, and the fight scene between the good drones with Tessa and V just goes to show how far the Glitch Productions team has come, and with the visuals are great as well. The horror especially is really well done, and as much as I hate the gag of Uzi getting interrupted, Uzi's username slayed me. Especially when Servant N screams only her username before getting dragged might be the funniest thing I've ever witnessed from this series. But overall, this episode had so much left to be desired for me to consider as my cup of tea for it to be one of the most memorable episodes. We start off in an office full of robo-raptors, which are capable of stunning the drones they see to consume and haul, and it's nice that we get more variety of enemies, especially ones that are terrifying like these raptors. It's a safe bet that these guys will be the main obstacles for our main characters. Speaking of which, we then cut for what was a cliffhanger from the previous episode, and they don't fight like we expected. They actually come together and talk for a while until Doll grabs the robo-roach and storms off as the main characters chase her in hopes to kill her, but sadly they couldn't. God damn it. But convenient timing, as we're now in a ravine, and we discover this ravine has a cabin facility. As Tessa asks Jay to take care of her ship, Uzi, still being confused, asks Tessa what's the deal with Doll. Why did she even storm off? Tessa says she reckons that the humans did something to her folks down in the facility, as they gave her folks a sickness she inherited. We begin looking to find a way inside, and we're taken back from all of the drones dead with text warning not to come here, and to look at the light. A bit ominous, but I'll roll with it. Although we do get an exchange that is rather suspicious.
Human made security this experiment can control. Maybe.
Anything to screw Sin's plan.
And for Mom backstory, right, dude?
Yeah.
Mom backstory. Could this imply that N was the one who killed Uzi's mother? Anyways, Tessa gets pulled and our gang is on their way to save her, only to pass by a baby drone, and both Uzi and N agree to shoot it down. Just really funny. Unfortunately, the baby would escape and our main characters would get caught red-handed by our new two main characters, more so the Texas drone, Alice, and the baby drone, Biao, with the cowboy hat that Ed was trying to shoot down earlier. And Alice would make our main characters flashbang, and all of them would get carried in the laboratory and put all of them laid down strapped. What's more disappointing is that Uzi's absolute solver powers are no longer manipulating because of the big magnet that she has on her head that is taped, and N is having surgery from Biao, though admittedly it doesn't look like it wants to do any harm in contrast to Alice, so much to the point where it's a safe bet to assume that Biao actually hates his position so much and wants to be free, but is only manipulated to do his task because Alice just says so. Though luckily Ed and Tessa managed to escape the room where they were trapped. Speaking of Alice, we would also find out that in the middle of cutting Uzi's finger, she apparently knows a lot about Uzi's deceased mother, Nori. Don't know how she stalked or even violated Uzi like this, but whatever. What she doesn't know is that Ed and Tessa had escaped and are finding a way to distract them while Tessa also starts researching something, which based on Ed's disbelief on his face for what Tessa found is not looking so hot. Biao would find their absence, and this is where Alice puts out her plan B to send the Robo-Raptors just in case Biao can't find them himself. And this is where Uzi tries her absolute hardest to pull her absolute solver manipulation to see if she could stop whatever nonsense Alice is affecting. Then we cut to Ed and Tessa finding out what's going to happen to Earth if our main characters don't act fast in the perfect time. Tessa also explains,
We know it mutates and damaged AI. It took Sin as a host, then it took everything. The humans who saw what was happening at home. All they did was spread it.
she also makes it pretty clear that she first needs to find which drones are infected, then when they get to the labs, Anne has to make a choice to pick a universe over Uzi before she's not herself anymore, prompting a Robo-Raptor to stand next to Anne menacingly and stuns him immediately as the creature takes him to a corner so that the Robo-Raptor makes Tessa see her friend get eaten alive. But Tessa finds a way to communicate with the Robo-Raptor, then it decides to bite her hand only for it to malfunction and just fucking die because of the liquid blood. And this calls attention to the other Robo-Raptors to seek Tessa. And as Alice watches Tessa on-footed, she begins to notice all the objects floating around and looks back to see Uzi not being Uzi anymore, but instead Sin takes over the body for a split second to create a portal destroying the buttons that activate the doors. And this catches the attention of every Robo-Raptor. And with Alice panicking and trying to figure out how to close the doors, a raptor sees Alice and immediately stuns and steps on her to die. And at this point the claustrophobia is real. And with Biao's kind-hearted nature, he actually makes a sacrifice to himself to distract the Robo-Raptor so that V can get out and take Uzi with her, only for the portal to be fully enhanced. And don't take my word for this, but I believe that the portal enhanced is Sin's consciousness exiting from being inside of Uzi. Now with no threats in the room, V is free to get herself and Uzi out of there. And finally we come back together and V gets very angry of Tessa not even being good at controlling the sentient. Oh, that's what these Robo-Raptors are called. Would have been nicer if we got to know that a little bit earlier, but whatever. Luckily, Uzi would wake up and would quickly give Anne a massive hug. With a quick glance of V not very trustworthy of Tessa, which is pretty valid. I mean, look at her. Now we cut to the last of the Sentinels, alive and bloodthirsty, scanning footprints of the drones, who are hiding for the Sentinel's sight as V plans to 360 no-scope on the mofo. And we get another moment of Uzi comforting N, who's obviously had a rough time throughout the laboratory, and reminding him that everything is going to be okay. This is such a nice throwback from the 4th episode. Remember how N was controlling Uzi at her most troubled moment where she just lost it? Well, now we get a complete 180 as we now get to see Uzi trying to cheer N up during his most troubling time of his life. We see how far this couple has become and are willing to do anything for each other. This girl is absolutely in love, and I'm proud of her for her loyalty here. Unfortunately, one of the other Sentinels has opened one of the doors, which caught the eye of the Sentinel that was scanning the drone's footprints earlier. The drones would go ahead to follow them, but to no avail, as they would find a long hallway with Doll laying there, stunned. Okay, let's be honest, this is 100% Doll faking her body laying to set a trap towards her folks. Even V agrees with me on this matter. And our drones make sure to be extra careful as V predicts this is 100% a trap, only to see Tessa standing right next to the stunned doll. Guess she found a shortcut to get to her death trap. Anyways, as the drones slowly walk towards her, Ed and Uzi finally begin to hold hands for the first time, and both are flattered to even agree to do this in the first place. As we get to Tessa and V teases Ed and Uzi for a short gag, the Robo-Raj Tessa has held would get yanked by Doll, who just as it predicted sets a trap, releasing plenty of Sentinels before jumping off into the abyss. We now get a pretty rad fight between V and the Sentinels. Meanwhile, Uzi uses her absolute solver manipulation to get into the elevator, which would take a while, but she managed to pull through. Unfortunately, despite despite V's hardest efforts, she has to make the choice to be left behind and sacrifice herself as Uzi and Tessa go on the elevator without her and says her final words, "Uzi, I trust you." Okay, I'm just gonna get this out of the way. I'm sure when this episode came out, this ending may have tugged a lot of people's heartstrings, but I was kind of one of the few people that knew that the murder drones could just come back. As shown in the past episodes, when every death of our trio would occur, they would always come back to life or just reappear in the next episode because of the disassembly power. On the topic of V though, now that we finished summarizing this episode, I kind of want to talk about V's arc here because it's genuinely fantastic and honestly a good change of pace. At first, it may seem easy to cast V as extremely annoying, especially with pushing N away from her being extremely antagonistic against Uzi. But over the course of this series, we see that V knew way more about Sin than N knows. She only kept Uzi's crisis a mystery from N is because of his attachment to her and knowing that if telling the truth, he would even believe V or not, given her gossip behavior towards him. In episode 4, during Disassembly Uzi's killing spree, we see V saying the name Sin for the first time. Obviously, she didn't think that it was Doll who set a trap on her to become a monster, so she just assumed it was Sin controlling Uzi based on her monster appearance. Slowly, as V started to get to know Uzi a little bit, we see that she realized that it wasn't Uzi that was the problem. It was the absolute solver manipulation that Uzi carried throughout the course of these episodes, all of which she had no idea to even control in the first place. And she was always concerned that she could either bring Sin or Doll to make matters even worse than it needed to. And in this episode where Sin was present in Uzi twice, we see Uzi only being concerned towards the Sin apocalypse, not on Uzi herself. And she made it clear with her final words when making the choice to be left behind for now that she trusts her as her own being and hoping she could finally figure out what's wrong with Uzi's absolute solver manipulation. So yeah, V's arc is definitely a highlight here, but that's definitely not the only thing I'll give this episode credit for. The visuals and animation continues to thrive. The new obstacles like the Sentinels are genuinely terrifying, and Alice was a fun antagonist, though I kind of wish this wouldn't be the last time we even see this character because I feel like she holds a lot more potential than we got. Still, I'm very much stumped on the whole mom backstory that N said earlier. This better have a strong payoff by the next episode, brother. This episode kicks in for probably the coldest setting this web series has ever opened so far, with Sin being in the body of Nori, Uzi's mother, killing all of the researchers, and through the shenanigans, we see a researcher get informed about a drone named Yeva, and has been given an opportunity to look after her to see if the researcher could use her as a plot device to their situation while the rest of this team are fighting back against. And the researcher succeeded, and it didn't take that long at all to find that she had been locked up in a locker. Damn, Sin really pulled a high school bully move on these drones. Anyways, both our Guy and Yeva get out of the lockers, and upon entering the lab center, it was too late as Sin got hold of her power. And we get a smooth transition to a brand new character of some gremlin with some gamer cat headphones listening to Nightcore. Base as fuck, Liam. Keep the relatability train for us depressed teens to young adults. And this gremlin seems to have a bit of a connection to Sin as it's been doing a lot of research on her. Eventually it sets off to go investigating in the mines for answers. Then we cut to perhaps the most anxiety-inducing gag of this whole web series by far, where my prediction I briefly mentioned in episode 6 as a speculation from N's line of mom backstory would be proven 100% correct. Here's why. You see, we get some serious tension between Uzi and Ed caused by Tessa, who demands Ed to sort his deepest secret out to Uzi. I wonder what the secret could possibly be, and I genuinely can't wait to hear it. Then Uzi storms off, leaving Ed all alone, and all he has left now is her. In Servant V's form, surprisingly, mocking his misery and fear. And after giving him a hug, he gets flashbacks from when he was with his drone freaks. More than 3 drones and Sin working together slaughtering homies. And as N cut back to reality, he gets dragged and is never seen again. I'm kidding, but can you imagine though? Anyways, we cut back to Uzi, who is about to head into the Sin mansion, and upon searching for a bit, she finds a hole in the computer where our gremlin was doing its research on Sin, while the Nightcore is still playing, which is pretty funny. Unfortunately, we don't get to see Uzi's concern on her face, as we then cut to N dragged into the abyss of hands, flesh, and rib cages. Fortunately, he gets saved by our gremlin, and we get to hear her finally talking for the first time. And as N and our gremlin get the fuck out of the tunnel, our gremlin surprisingly recognizes N, and we get confirmed that our gremlin is actually Uzi's deceased mother in a small gremlin form. She literally says she is looking for her husband, aka the dad, and knowing Uzi and her dad, he obviously really gets confused who this gremlin really is. We then cut to Lizzie and Thad out in the cold, and here Jay shows up going to Tessa's ship and sets off to leave. And out of nowhere, the dad shows up, and here we get informed he has brought the students to take down the murder drones once and for all. Wow, this dude is finally showing his emotions for the first time and is going about how his daughter is both obsessed with cannibalism and nightcore. Then we cut to Tessa going into the lockers where Yeva was kept before being released and does a very evil move by corrupting the database of Yeva and Nori, which again is Uzi's mother, causing the computer to literally explode as if it was a bomb. Yeah, it's become a safe bet that our Tessa that has been with our protagonist wasn't actually as quirky or friendly as she made it out to be. Perhaps that's why we get up close and personal from the 2 times she had said something even remotely ominous. But just as she gets comfortable, Doll shows up, and apparently this whole time when working together, Doll had been manipulating and consuming the world. But Tessa gets her mind messed around for a little bit. She storms off with a quick glimpse of Sin in her new form after Doll. Tessa was Sin this whole time, fellas! Anyways, we now cut back to Sin fighting our human until he gets saved by Yeva and headshots the cross to Sin's face. She really pulled the power of Christ compels you on her ass in the most literal way possible, huh? But that was not enough to kill her. However, Yeva did eventually got Sin out of the body of Nori, but not long before the explosion that would wipe all of the humans and the drones that were there in the mansion. And oh, all of that sequence of the Sin massacres was Nori explaining the timeline of events to N? Okay then. Now that both Nori and Ann know what's going on, they're also made aware that the drones like Uzi, Yeva, and Doll have their problem solver injected to their consciousness. Then we cut to Uzi, who is now coming face to face with Doll, who is severely injured and eventually just dies. Officially. And out of nowhere, Sin being in Tessa's body shows up and is clearly about to betray her. Well, not before we shift to N with Nori, who tells him that she, despite being the mother, may have been worse to Uzi than her husband, aka the dad, and demands to N not to reveal that twist of reality. Well, not until Nori is ready to tell Uzi herself. And hey, she even says the bite me slogan that Uzi had been saying throughout these episodes. We then cut to Uzi, who's about to get backstabbed big time, until Ed finally shows up to ask Sin about the patch. And after just a couple of words from her, Ed just chops her head off as she finally dies and everything is resolved. Or so we thought. Yeah, we're not even done with Sin. She now swapped bodies with Uzi and sets to corner Ed and gets close to killing him until it's Nori, baby! However, as enticing as this fight has gotten, and no exaggeration, it really is awesome, the fight would end with Nori confronting Sin as Uzi and telling her that the murder drones, specifically N, were the ones who killed Nori herself, knocking Sin's consciousness out of there. Jesus Christ. And after giving each other a big hug, Sin would finally come back and she's going to become more deadlier than before, leaving the couple paralyzed as Sin pieces out of there. And we end this episode of Jay landing her pilot ship. It gets hit by the same bus like in episode 4. And we also get a last bit of Uzi and N getting dragged into the abyss of hell with Sin. Not until the pilot keys that Jay had lost start bouncing in the hellhole, and Uzi makes a sacrifice to lift N out of the mansion as she goes into the hellhole. Definitely the most chaotic episode by far in terms of storytelling. Like, there's a lot to unfold in terms of all the crazy twisted reveals. Some of the twists I did see coming, like with N being the one who killed Uzi's mother, while other reveals such as our Tessa with her pilot suit wasn't actually Tessa but was instead Sin this whole time, which completely caught me off guard. Despite whether these twists did surprise you or not, none of these twists are bad at all. Sin being Tessa, for an example, now after having to rewatch these episodes, explains a lot of the shenanigans as to why our heroes were so lost. Even Doll was confused what was going on when she sided with her. I think the helmet Sin was wearing this whole time was to foreshadow her willingness to hide her identity from the public eye. Nori's consciousness as a little gremlin caught me off guard as well. By the time she even said Khan, aka the dad's name, my mind was just blown away. But again, where she comes from makes sense. It was Sin this whole time. Sin is key to everything. And it put a shock on me when Nori said she might have been way worse than what the dad might have been portrayed when raising Uzi. With her getting the planet in great danger and was the woman to get N and his murder freaks on the planet to kill, and with her having the absolute solver in her would also make sense as to why she had tried her hardest to track Sin down. And the part where Uzi just kicks her own mother into the void is just funny as shit to me. I don't know why. This might honestly be my favorite episode so far, which is crazy as episode 4 was barely going to be my number 1. Keep the flow going, team. The next and last episode better be worth it. Well, fellas, this is the final episode. Does this episode leave a certified justice to Murder Drones? Well, there's only one way to find out. We open with Uzi and Nori floating in time and space after having themselves going into the Sin hellhole. And since they can't talk as everything is forced to be quiet, they talk to each other with shown words. Uzi having to talk through her eyes, while Nori uses handwriting on the meteorite, which I can't lie is pretty cute. They both come up with a plan that removing Sin's heart will be the true victory. But just as Nori gives the pickaxe to Uzi, they get struck by the same pilot that Jay left a while back. As it got a hold to Uzi, a familiar face comes back.
Spaceship pilot! Sorry, I didn't know.
You were supposed to get away.
Yeah, I'm kind of like actually mad about what you did, but we can talk later.
Then die mad, bitch!
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
So Sin finds her way inside the pilot with her tentacles and causes the pilot to literally explode, and Uzi and N start swimming in the sky. They eventually get a hold of each other and another wholesome moment, and go down to, as Uzi puts it, murder a planet. Then it cuts to Jay, who sees the dad and the student drones from her distance is planning to literally kill them all. Up until V and her sentinel with the cowboy hat show up for a showdown against her. I love how in this whole rival, while the other students are invested in the fight, Lizzie just doesn't give a f and text her friends as if she's numb or just going out her day. Most relatable student drone if I'm being completely honest, even if I'm not a female myself. Sorry ladies. Well, that's not long before we get a genuinely funny gag of the Sentinel tormenting our allies. Anyways, we get more of the rivalry, and it's become insanely cool how the only reason as to why our murder trio had fallen out, they were never sent by the humans they used to live with during the mansion, but rather from Sin confusing our trio for what they were built for. Anyhow, after for a while, a familiar face shows up. That's right, it's the auto-tuned bitch herself, Sid. This fight between our heroes and this rodent perfectly shows how truly deadly she has become. She was really close to ripping Uzi and N's hearts. If that were to happen, they would have been truly gone. But luckily they recovered, and both quickly hid away from her as much as possible. Unfortunately, Sin pulls a Doc Ock and spreads her hand tentacles to spot our heroes, and everything seems to be going well until V shows up, and this is where serious tension of Uzi and N not giving in to speak up for V because of Sin. But N couldn't resist any longer and speaks up, resulting Sin removing his heart. Alright, so Nori's gremlin self is actually the functioning heart that all drones have to have in their robot selves. Kind of reminds me of the crying spirits possessing the animatronics in the FNAF franchise.
Shut up, loser.
That's the last FNAF reference I'll make, I promise. With N's heart jumping back into the drone body, as Sid gets really close to killing V, boom baby, Uzi and her sidekicks, including her dad, is here to put a stop to Sin once and for all. And here Uzi says,
No one traumatizes these weirdly hot robots but me!
Glad you're not dead or whatever.
Boring and annoying.
Oh, sorry. Just me in here. I think dumb things are frickin' cool, and I am... Your butt, babe! Woo!
Okay.
Glitch Productions, never have I thought in a million years when I come to a fight scene and have Nightcore to play as boss music, but I couldn't be happier with the results. Can I just compliment the evolution of the fight scenes? I swear to God, we went from awkward as from episode 1 to professionally made Dragon Ball Z fights as more episodes was coming out. There was a part where Uzi and Sin hit Jay's sliced head as if they were playing baseball and kicking back one of Sin's rockets to her, and it's absolutely badass. This fight would end with Uzi ripping Sin's heart gremlin, and finally after all this time, she makes the heart into a black hole which turns everything to black and white except for the blood, and most importantly stop time except for our heroes and also Sin, who was close to eating the black hole, but Uzi would luckily be fast enough to eat it beforehand, causing everything to go back to normal and Sin would finally melting away, leaving her to finally fucking die. Through the black hole she consumed, however, Uzi would begin to pass out and would wake up in the middle of nowhere with all the side characters including the dad, who reunites with Nori for only 2 seconds before she said go f*** yourself. Yeah, this dude got owned big time. He deserved it. Ed and V would arrive and reunite with Uzi peacefully after all the havoc Sin put them through. And we end off with Uzi in the future sharing her journey to her classmates and the murder drones, including her teacher who looks like he's just absolutely done with life. The end. What a great finale for this web series. No and brand new characters were introduced, which is fine by me as finales are there to serve to just wrap things up what's most important. But note that I said that this finale was great. As much as I wish it was perfect, there is one aspect that does bother me a little bit, and that's the return of Jay. Her role in the later episodes made her seem like a mini boss fight in contrast to the pilot. The sudden irrelevancy from Jay still confuses me to this day, as I feel like the Glitch Productions team would have cooked if they had more time to explore Jay a bit more on why she needs to have more important screen time during the finale. But I totally get the stressful deadline that must have occurred. Deadlines are also the bane of my existence as well. Outside of Jay's presence, everything else was spot on. I love how Sin throughout her villaininess manages to enjoy all of her menace. There's never a moment where she tries to be intimidating or take things seriously. She just smiles all the way through, and her usage of the shocked emoji when Uzi ate the black hole slayed me. The jokes in general were just legitimately funny all over. Though I gotta say, Nori calling her own daughter a little bitch has to be absolutely foul. Like, I can't be the only person who sees that as child abuse. The horror of this episode is also just adequate. So many close calls of our main characters losing their heart gremlin from Sin, and the hand tentacles from her when catching Uzi and Ed is bone chilling. And Uzi just passing out after eating the black hole nearly gave me a heart attack. This episode also has to have the best animation out of all of the episodes we've covered, which certainly makes this finale all the more worthwhile, not only from the fights, but also from the special effects. And lastly, the soundtrack. I have not touched this aspect up until now, but the team did a damn good job with the OST. And like I said, with the Nightcore that played during the Sin showdown will never leave my brain now. And honestly, I want more shows to not be afraid to insert such awesomeness like this. Well, folks, that was my retrospective on Murder Drones. A show that thrives with following a story that is directed towards cringe teenagers to young adults like me. The show's aesthetic, dialogue, and overall vibe is 100% supposed to be cringe. Something that could definitely turn some people off if that's not your type, but to me is what makes this show so unique in contrast to the other shows that have been coming out in recent times. Shows where, if you ask me, go either too millennial to the point of being outdated or too derivative towards infants because no adults seem to figure out what kids are supposed to enjoy nowadays. Murder Drones, on the other hand, has and for a while has been a breath of fresh air, perfectly balancing a concept of what it's like to be a teenager going through interests that no one around you, even from your own blood, seems to understand, until you find the right people to work together in order to go through your biggest insecurities that's holding you back from success. This is why this web series speaks to me, because it shows that no matter how messy of a background you might come from, you deserve a happy ending. I am not going to make another one of these for a while, so enjoy for what I've ranted about for over an hour. And until the next video, peace!